They thought America's greatest secrets were written in textbooks. They were wrong. Hidden beneath centuries of dust, buried inside a forgotten chest found in the ruins of an abandoned Virginia plantation, lay a journal, one so explosive, so impossible, that historians swore it had to be a forgery. But the ink was real. The dates were real. The names were terrifyingly real. It told the story of a mysterious brotherhood influencing early America, a civilization older than the colonies themselves, a catastrophe covered up by the founding fathers themselves, and a young enslaved boy whose memory threatened to rewrite the entire history of the United States. This is that story.
The discovery. The storm arrived without warning. Thick clouds rolled over the Blue Ridge Mountains, swallowing the late autumn sun until the daylight dimmed into soot-gray gloom. Wind whipped through the tall pines of rural Virginia as Dr. Evelyn Hart tightened her jacket and stepped out of her truck. Leaves spiraled violently across the gravel drive, pelting her boots as though urging her to get back inside. She ignored them. Evelyn was not the kind of historian who turned away from a discovery, especially not the kind that came from a call at 2:37 a.m. from a trembling intern repeating the same sentence over and over. "Professor, we found something inside the foundation. You need to see this." The property in front of her, Belcroft Estate, stood silent, a skeletal shadow of what had once been one of Virginia's largest 18th-century plantations. Most of the main house had collapsed decades ago, leaving only fragments, a charred doorway, a vine-strangled brick wall, and the cracked remains of the cellar where her team had been excavating. Lightning ripped through the sky, illuminating the ruins for a brief, violent moment. Evelyn walked faster. Her boots splashed through puddles as she descended toward the excavation tent. Inside, the air smelled of wet soil, mold, and adrenaline. A cluster of grad students huddled around a portable floodlight. They parted instantly when they saw her. "Where is it?" Evelyn demanded. Nobody spoke. They simply pointed at a dirt-covered wooden chest the size of a shoebox sitting on a table, its lid slightly cracked, as though something inside had pushed upward at the final moment before the house burned down nearly 150 years earlier. The chest itself was strange, unlike anything Evelyn had seen in decades of fieldwork. It wasn't English, it wasn't colonial, it wasn't African, French, or indigenous. It looked older, much older. The wood was lacquered in a deep mahogany sheen that had strangely survived the fire. Its edges were reinforced with an unfamiliar alloy, metal that gleamed even beneath centuries of soot, etched with geometric symbols spiraling inward like constellations. Evelyn leaned closer. "Has anyone opened it?" she asked. "No," her student replied, "but you should see what's holding it shut." He handed her a pair of latex gloves. Only then did she notice the lock, or rather, the absence of one. There was no keyhole, no latch, no hinge.
Instead, the chest was sealed shut by a thin strip of braided silver, delicate and impossibly intact. Woven into the braid was a symbol Evelyn recognized instantly, though she had never seen it used this way. A single eye, surrounded by 13 small rays. Her breath hitched. "That's impossible," she whispered. A girl from the group swallowed nervously. "Is it?" "Yes," Evelyn said quietly. "It's the same symbol found in Washington's private correspondence, the same one rumored to be connected to the so-called Meridian Society." The interns exchanged frightened looks. The Meridian Society was the kind of thing you only discussed over drinks. One of those semi-mythical organizations supposedly older than the Freemasons, whispered to have influenced the early colonies long before America became a nation. Most historians dismissed it as folklore. Most. But Evelyn knew better. For years, she'd been chasing fragments, scattered notes from plantation ledgers, coded letters from early Virginia gentry, unexplained symbols carved into foundation stones, enough to keep her up at night, enough to make her a pariah among traditional academics. And now, there was proof. Another crack of thunder made the tent tremble. "Get me a scalpel," she said. An intern hesitated. "Shouldn't we do this in the lab?" "History doesn't wait for good weather," Evelyn replied. They brought her the scalpel. She sliced gently through the silver braid. The metal separated soundlessly, almost eagerly, as though relieved to be freed. The chest exhaled.
There was no other way to describe it. A faint burst of air escaped. Dust mixed with something warmer, almost metallic. The students stepped back. Evelyn lifted the lid. Inside lay a single object, a leather-bound journal, blackened at the edges, but shockingly intact. The cover bore no title or name, only the same eerie symbol of an eye and 13 rays. Her heart hammered as she opened to the first page. The handwriting was elegant, looping, unmistakably early 18th century. But what shocked her wasn't the penmanship, it was the signature. Written by Elias Finch, Year of Our Lord, 1721. Elias Finch. A name lost to American history. A name Evelyn had seen only twice, once in an inventory list from 1743, and once in a cryptic letter written by an early plantation owner, referring to Finch as the boy with the forbidden memory. Evelyn felt her pulse racing. If this journal was real, if the dates were accurate, if Elias Finch truly existed, then America had a forgotten witness, a young boy, likely enslaved, who recorded events before 1721 that no historian had ever acknowledged. She turned the page. Immediately, her breath caught. The journal didn't start with childhood stories or plantation life or anything familiar from early American history. It started with a catastrophe, a description of a city, ancient, hidden, massive, lying beneath the mountains of Virginia, a society older than Jamestown, a brotherhood that guarded a secret so dangerous the early founding fathers allegedly swore an oath to destroy every trace of it. Evelyn's hand shook violently, because the first sentence of the journal read, "I was 9 years old when the underground city of Meridian fell, buried by the fire the sky."
She looked up at her students. "Everyone," she said hoarsely, "pack the equipment. We're leaving. Now." "But, Professor, why?" Evelyn closed the journal, her mind racing faster than the storm outside. "Because," she whispered, "this story wasn't buried by accident, and now that we've uncovered it, someone else may come looking." Lightning flashed. The tent plunged into darkness. And in that moment, Evelyn realized something chilling. The journal was warm, as if the ink had been written recently.
A journal that should not exist. The journal hummed back to life as one of the interns frantically smacked its side, restoring the floodlight's brilliant white glow. Rain battered the excavation tent, turning the canvas into a drum. Evelyn clutched the journal tightly against her chest, as if it might evaporate if she loosened her grip. She forced herself to breathe. "Pack everything," she yelled again, louder this time. Her students scrambled. Zip ties snapped around equipment cases. Tablets and surveying tools disappeared inside waterproof bags. The storm outside only grew worse, the sky now trembling with thunder that felt too deliberate, too close. She swallowed hard. She wasn't superstitious. She didn't believe in omens or curses. But something about the journal felt wrong. Not dangerous, not evil. Just wrong in the way an earthquake feels wrong before the ground splits open. She glanced again at its cover. The eye with 13 rays stared back at her, Not ominous, but watchful, like a guardian carved by a civilization that refused to be forgotten, a civilization that shouldn't exist.
15 minutes later, everything was packed into the trucks. The interns huddled inside, shivering from the cold and from the unspoken panic hanging thick in the air. Evelyn climbed into the driver's seat of her own truck, journal wrapped under her coat. She turned the key. The engine didn't start. She tried again. Nothing. A cold, prickling sensation crawled up her spine. Her truck had never once failed to start. Not once. Tonight, of all nights? She pulled out her phone. No signal, of course. Lightning flashed again. The world outside turned white. For the briefest heartbeat, Evelyn saw something through the sheets of rain, standing at the tree line beyond the ruins. A figure, tall, still, facing the excavation site. The flash faded. The darkness swallowed everything. She blinked rapidly, her breath fogging the windshield. It was probably nothing. Probably a shadow. Probably her nerves. But deep inside her gut, where intuition whispered truths logic refused to touch, Evelyn knew better. She knew that once the chest was opened, they were no longer alone. "Professor?" one of the interns called from the next truck. "You okay?" She forced a smile. "Yes, just flooded engine. You all go ahead. I'll call roadside assistance once the storm settles." "But this area barely has service." "Go," Evelyn insisted. "I'll be right behind you." Reluctantly, they drove off, tires kicking mud in every direction. Their taillights vanished slowly into the storm. And now, Evelyn was alone, except for the journal, burning a quiet suspicion into her ribs. She took a steadying breath. If the truck wouldn't start, she'd wait. If someone was watching, she'd deal with it. But she had to know what was inside that journal, because the first page alone hinted at a secret lost for centuries. She flipped to the beginning again, her hands trembling. The Journal of Elias Finch. Year of our Lord, 1721. I write these words to preserve what remains of Meridian. Whether anyone reads them, God only knows. But the truth must survive even if the city did not. I was 9 years old when the fire from the sky came. The elders called it an omen. The guardians said it was punishment. The masters said nothing at all. But the truth is this: it was neither an omen nor a punishment. It was a signal. Evelyn's breath caught. A signal. Sent to who? She turned the page. Meridian lies beneath the great mountains, protected by stone and secrecy. They say our ancestors built it long before the English ships came, long before even the tribes of the forests crossed these lands. But for all its age, all its knowledge, all its guardians, it could not withstand the day the sky burned red. Evelyn didn't realize she was gripping the pages so tightly until her knuckles turned white. A city? Underground? Older than indigenous nations? Impossible. Outrageous. Yet Elias described it not as myth, but as memory. She continued. My mother worked in the weaving chambers. My father served the archivists. They told me stories of the world above, but warned never to go there. I knew only the tunnels, the glowing crystals, the great murals, and the hum of the machines the masters forbade us to touch. But the day everything changed, I saw the sky for the first time.
Evelyn froze. Machines? Crystals? A small enslaved boy describing an advanced civilization beneath colonial Virginia? This had to be a hoax, a myth, a fantasy. And yet, something about the handwriting, the diction, the ink. Every instinct in her seasoned historian's mind told her this journal was authentic, and Elias Finch had seen something no historian had ever recorded. She flipped to the next line eagerly. The ceiling collapsed that morning. Light poured in like water. Screaming echoed through the lower chambers as people fled from fires that burned in colors I'd never seen. Blue, white, and something like molten silver. The elders said Meridian would fall. They said the fire was coming for all of us. But Father said something different. This is not death, he told me. This is a warning.
A cold chill slid down Evelyn's spine. A warning of what? She didn't have to wait long. Father took me to the forbidden hall, the chamber only the masters were allowed to enter. I knew the stories, I knew the punishments, but he said the old rules no longer mattered. At the center of the hall was the eye, bright as a star. It pulsed once, twice, then dimmed. That was when Father whispered the truth. This will not be the last time the sky burns, and one day you must tell them. Evelyn clutched the journal tightly. For a boy born in 1712 to write something like this, it was unreal, unprecedented, impossible. A deep rumble of thunder shook the ground beneath her truck. The storm wasn't letting up. She turned another page, but suddenly a sharp rap on the driver's window made her jump so violently she dropped the journal onto the passenger seat. She snapped her head toward the sound. A flashlight beam blinded her. A voice shouted over the storm, "Ma'am, you stuck?" Relief washed over her so quickly she nearly laughed. A state trooper, drenched from the rain, stood beside her truck. His badge gleamed beneath the flashlight. "Yes," she said breathlessly, "my engine won't start, and I'm getting no cell service." The trooper nodded. "Storm's messing everything up. You shouldn't be out here alone. Roads are flooding fast." He walked around to check the hood. Evelyn exhaled. She wasn't alone after all. Everything was fine. The trooper tapped her window again. She lowered it a few inches. "You said your engine won't turn?" he asked. "Yes." He leaned closer. "I can help you with that." His voice changed. Too calm, too controlled. Not the casual tone of a highway patrol officer. Evelyn stiffened. The trooper's eyes flicked to the journal on her seat. And in that instant, in the split-second flicker of lightning, Evelyn saw something that drained every drop of warmth from her body. The symbol on his glove. An eye with 13 rays, exactly like the journal. Exactly like the chest. Her heart stopped. The trooper smiled faintly. "Step out of the vehicle, Professor Hart." Not a request, an order. And outside the storm screamed harder, as if warning her, "Run."
The trooper's eyes glowed unnaturally pale in the lightning. Rain streamed down his face, carving shadows across the symbol branded on his glove. The eye with 13 rays. "Step out of the truck, Professor Hart." "No," Evelyn whispered. She slammed the gear into reverse and floored the accelerator. The tire shrieked against the mud as the truck jerked backward, narrowly missing the trooper's outstretched arm. He shouted. Another pair of headlights flared to life behind him. They weren't alone. Evelyn whipped the wheel, skidding onto the narrow mountain road. Water hammered her windshield. Thunder shook the world. The two vehicles behind her surged forward like predators who had finally cornered their prey. She clutched the journal to her chest with one hand, the steering wheel with the other.
Elias, what did you get me into? The cruiser rammed her bumper. The jolt was violent. Evelyn's head smashed the steering wheel, and for a moment her vision blurred.
The second car pulled beside her. A window rolled down. A man inside, hooded, face hidden, held up something metallic, a symbol, a badge. The same one from the journal's cover. The eye. Meridian wasn't a myth. Something sharp hit her tire. The truck lurched. She lost control. The guardrail shattered beneath her weight, and the world dropped. Metal screamed, glass exploded. Then everything went black. She woke to silence. Warmth. Orange glow. A fire. Evelyn sat up to find herself inside a vast stone chamber. The walls glowed faintly blue from crystal veins threading through them like lightning frozen in rock. A man stepped out of the shadows. Tall, gray-bearded, calm eyes. And on his robe, the eye of 13 rays. "Welcome, Evelyn Hart," he said softly, "to the real Meridian." Evelyn's breath stuck in her throat. The city exists. Elias, he wasn't lying." The man nodded. "He was one of our last children born above ground. His journal was meant to guide someone back to us." "Back? You mean—"
Yes. He gestured toward a massive metallic structure in the chamber's center. A towering crystal machine combination hummed with ancient energy. "The beacon," he said. "The same signal that almost destroyed our civilization in 1721. Evelyn stepped closer. "Why bring me here?" "Because only an outsider can shut it down." "Shut it down? But why now?" The man's jaw tightened. "The defectors, the broken eye. You met them tonight. They want to reactivate the beacon. They believe another fire from the sky will cleanse the world and restore their power above the surface." Evelyn shuddered. "So the trooper? They were all—" "Hunters," he finished, "sent to retrieve the journal, to find this chamber, to turn the beacon on."
He placed a small crystal key in her hand. "Insert this into the heart of the beacon," he said softly. "It will end the signal forever." "And Meridian?" she asked quietly. "Will collapse, and we with it." Evelyn's throat tightened. "You're asking me to destroy your entire civilization?" "No," he said gently. "We are already ghosts, but the world above still has a future. Save them, and our story will live through you." The chamber rumbled. Stone cracked. "They found us," the man whispered. Shouts echoed from the tunnels. The broken eye were here. He pushed Evelyn urgently toward the beacon. "Go!" Evelyn sprinted across the platform, the journal slapping against her chest. Shadows moved behind her. Footsteps. Voices. She reached the beacon. A circular opening pulsed at its center, waiting. Evelyn lifted the crystal key. Her hands shook uncontrollably. She thought of Elias, of the journal, of the city he had tried to save. She pushed the key in. Light exploded. A deep, ancient roar filled the chamber. Crystal shuddered. Walls splintered. Waterfalls of dust poured from the ceiling. Evelyn was thrown backward as the beacon imploded into itself, and the city of Meridian began to fall. The guardian man met her eyes across the collapsing chamber. He smiled. "Thank you." Then the floor swallowed him, and the world vanished
in white.